Secretary Timby, will you please call the roll?
Sir. Here. 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 Here.
Here. Here. Here.
Here.
Here. Here. Here.
Here, because Regent Conley Keesler took my regular seat.
What is she thinking? What is she thinking?
I think it's here.
You were shopping too much last night.
Yeah.
All right. Maybe we can move on. Well, I'm here too. Yeah. Thank you and good morning. The minutes of the November 9th and 10th, 2006 meeting have been distributed. Are there any additions or corrections? Seeing none, they will be deemed approved. You have the report of the November 28th, 2006 meeting of the Wisconsin Technical College System Board. Are there any questions or comments? The board's representatives are Regents Burmaster, Keene, Rosenzweig, and Smith. You also have the report of the December 6, 2006 meeting of the Hospital Authority Board. Are there any questions or comments? The board's representatives are Regents McPike, Rosenzweig, and Smith. At this time, I have a couple comments since our last meeting. I have had a number of meetings subsequent to the election with legislative leadership, and in particular Senator Robson, who has assured us that the confirmations of the pending region appointments will go forward as a first order of business. I also met with Senator Ressler and Jeskowitz for a number of reasons, and just some overall matters regarding the Legislative Audit Bureau report, but also to comment on parts of the report and prepare for the November 29th Legislative Audit Bureau report legislative hearing. And I think all of you received the written comments that I submitted subsequent to that meeting and prior to the legislative audit hearing. I attended the hearing and participated in the hearing with President Riley. It was an excellent meeting. I think that what should be noted is that while there was a lot of issues discussed in the LAB report, the important part is that we're moving forward in a positive way. And to that end, we have started our committee work with the regional office as the chairman to respond to some of the matters raised in the report. And the report raised some very good issues that we need to address, and as we have in the past, we will address them and we'll move forward. But it also gave us an opportunity to discuss what we have done on personnel. And if you go back another year, and for most of you that were on the board at the time, I think you have a lot to be proud of in terms of the things that we've addressed and the things that we've changed and the credibility that we have gained throughout at least in the legislature, for those positive steps. And I'm referring to more than just sick leave policy. I'm referring to the disciplinary committee efforts that you'll hear a final report on today, which I'm pleased to report is receiving faculty governance approval throughout the system, and also such matters as returning to tenured positions and the issues involved with our earlier problems that we addressed back at the West Bend meeting, I believe it was. But in any event, we received a lot of compliments, and I think the Legislative Audit Bureau legislative hearing went very well, and I think you all saw that it was reported as such in the newspaper. Finally, I've also met with the governor subsequent to the election to discuss the upcoming budget. This will be a rocky time for everybody. We know what the numbers look like. We've been here before, and obviously we think that things should change. I would report to you that he certainly understands the issue and that he is looking hard at addressing some of the things that we've requested, and in particular the growth initiatives. As to the cost to continue, that isn't something that's necessarily can be handled any other way than turning the heat up, and that's fun because it's mostly utility and expenses having to do with fringe benefit. In any event, that will be an ongoing discussion, and it will continue on a weekly basis, and all I can say is stay tuned on that. That's the end of my report. I would now turn it over to the President of the system, Kevin Riley.
Thank you. Thank you, President Walsh. And just to piggyback on what President Walsh had to say about the legislative audit hearing, at the end of the testimony that Regent Walsh and I gave, one of the co-chairs said, you know, this is the way an audit is supposed to work. You guys have done it right. So I thought that was high praise and not heard too often from audit co-chairs. Is that true, Regent Rosenzweig? So we were pleased with that reaction from the co-chair of the committee. We'll continue today by following up yesterday's discussion about public health in Milwaukee. We're joined today by Milwaukee Mayor Tom Barrett. We're very pleased to have him with us. While we could introduce him quickly and simply say, here's a man who needs no introduction, which he does not, I do want to take a few moments to introduce Tom and publicly thank him for his commitment to improving the health of the residents of our largest city. Since his election in 2004, Mayor Barrett has been a strong advocate for improving city services, including fire, police, housing, and public works. He's been a strong voice, especially for eliminating the health disparities in the city, and is passionate about equal access to quality health care for all Milwaukee residents. As you'll recall, the mayor brought that message to us and to this board about a year ago, and we appreciated his zeal and his candor. I could go on with Tom's resume and his accomplishments, but I want you to hear from him. He may be a little hoarse or out of breath today because he spent the last 2 days, I understand, hosting a community and economic development leadership summit where scores of Milwaukeeans heard from a variety of national, state, and local leaders on business, housing, neighborhoods, and workforce development issues. And of course, he's been dealing with the Falk Corporation explosion. And Tom, I think this should be an easy gig for you after the last couple of days that you've had. So we're pleased to have you, and the podium is yours.
Thank you very much, and it's an honor to be here, and it's a great opportunity to share my birthday with you. So I'm happy to be here. What place would you rather be? It was only 14 months ago that I had the great honor to appear before you for the first time and talk about the healthcare needs in the city of Milwaukee and why I felt passionately and continue to feel passionately that the university system, the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, can play a greater role than it has in addressing the healthcare needs in the state's largest city. At that meeting, as I'm sure most of you recall, the discussion centered around the University of Wisconsin Medical School and the program that occurred there. And after that meeting in October, we had a second meeting in November where the task was given to a number of people to advance this idea, to put into writing how we in Milwaukee could create a school of public health. And I want to thank all those who were involved from the system, all those that were involved from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, certainly the people from my own office. And yesterday we felt there was a very productive meeting before Danae Davis's committee, and I want to thank you and the members of that committee for the work that you did. When I was speaking 14 months ago, I talked a lot about the health disparities, and I'm going to touch on some of those today. I'm going to touch a little bit on why I think this is important in terms of workforce development, and talk about why, in a larger sense, public health is an important issue in not only the city of Milwaukee, but I think throughout the state of Wisconsin. But certainly, I think that the place where we have to start is with the disparities that exist in Milwaukee. And I would like to stand before you and tell you that those disparities have been eliminated, but the reality is that they are as serious today as they were a year ago. And I know all of you have received the report that was done, and if very briefly, I'm going to look at page 18, and you don't have to look at it with me, but I just want to point out a couple of these areas where the disparities are so great that it's important that I think that public policymakers, leaders in this state, understand the depth of the problem and the severity of the problem in the city of Milwaukee. The infant mortality racial disparity is something that has been written about publicly. It has been something that has been discussed widely, but it is something that is nothing less than a crisis. When you talk about this racial disparity in infant mortality, we have to deal with this issue. And what we're doing in the city of Milwaukee right now, in conjunction with working with one of our local hospitals, is to actually put public health nurses going door to door in 2 of the zip codes where we have the highest percentage of infant mortalities in the city to address that issue. Obviously, the infant mortality rate overall, the low birth weights, the immunization levels throughout the city are significantly lower than they are both in the county and the state. If you look at the sexually transmitted diseases, again, another public health issue that is very, very serious. But I want to center just for a minute on the lower right-hand corner where we talk about teen birth rates in the city of Milwaukee, and this is something I know Danae Davis is very familiar with. The year that we had the highest percentage of teen births was in 1993. The numbers are still high. We are one of the highest in the country. But if you think about this, 1993 was the year that we had the highest percentage of teenage births in the city of Milwaukee. How old are those children right now? Those children are turning 13 this year. And the correlation between teen births and poverty, and the correlation between poverty and crime, is known by everyone in this room. And to the extent that we are dealing with issues of violence, of lawlessness in the city of Milwaukee, I honestly don't think that we can ignore statistics like this. That's not to say that every child born to a teenage mother is going to end up in our criminal justice system or is going to end up poor. But sadly, the reality is that statistically, a high percentage of the children that are born to teenage mothers are going to live a life of poverty. And because they live a life of poverty, the statistics, again, show that a higher percentage of them are going to end up involved in the criminal justice system. We have to turn that around. We simply have to turn that around. And I understand that a school of public health, for all of these issues, and I can add lead poisoning, I can add child asthma, I can add obesity, all of these issues that are very, very important and have an impact on their ability to learn, as the superintendent knows, on their ability to support their families. All of those issues are negative indicators, and it was demonstrated when you look at compilation of all these negative indicators from the University of Wisconsin School of Medicine and Public Health. They list Milwaukee, sadly, at the bottom of the list of the 72 counties and the city of Milwaukee. In other words, for the first time this year, the University of Wisconsin Medical School and School of Public Health has included the city of Milwaukee and broken out its statistics to have them included with the 72 counties. And again, unfortunately, we rank at the bottom of that list. So I think of the Wisconsin idea. And I think of the Wisconsin idea in the context of what we talked about last year, because one of the other speakers is at that very same meeting was talking about the great Wisconsin idea. And I know it's mostly associated with the University of Wisconsin-Madison, but it's a reality for the whole system. And I think of the reforms that have occurred as a result of the Wisconsin idea, whether it's the direct election of senators, whether it's the work that was done to regulate railroads, the work that was done to create the workman's compensation system. In 1908, the Wisconsin idea advanced public health as one of its major initiatives. I think that we have a unique opportunity here today and through the next few years to take the Wisconsin idea for the first time in the 21st century and apply it in a way that will directly improve the lives, not only of the people who live in the city of Milwaukee and southeastern Wisconsin, but throughout the state of Wisconsin. Because not only are we talking about the public health of the people in the city of Milwaukee, and in particular the children in the city of Milwaukee, There's a second issue that I think is of very much importance and shows why this school is important, not just to me as the mayor of the city of Milwaukee, not just to the citizens of the city of Milwaukee, but to people throughout the state of Wisconsin. And that has to do with the workforce demands that we face in the current environment throughout the state of Wisconsin. A large percentage of those who are currently involved in public health are nearing retirement age. That means that we are going to have to find a way to introduce new workers into public health. Some of it can be done here at the University of Wisconsin Medical School. Some of it can be done at the University of Minnesota. It was discussed yesterday because it has a school of public health. But the reality is that for many people who live in the state of Wisconsin, the option of going to Minnesota to study public health is not a viable option. Many of the people that we're talking about that we want to get involved in this are people who currently have jobs. And those jobs are located in the state of Wisconsin, and many of them in southeastern Wisconsin. So the thought of having them attend school in Minnesota, I don't think is a workable alternative. I think it is important that we have this commitment here. I think it's important that it be located in the location where there are the greatest healthcare disparities, because I think it's going to provide us with what we need. And I don't like being the laboratory. I don't like my city being the laboratory for public health, but the reality is it is. And I think that by having a school of public health located there, it will allow us to address those healthcare concerns, but equally important, to develop the workforce that we need. If you look at the fastest growing occupations, many of them are healthcare occupations. And by having a school of public health, it's going to allow us to get more workers in this area. And one of the frustrations I hear over and over again from employers is not having individuals who have the ability to perform the job. So I want us in the city with the greatest diversity in the state to have the opportunity to train workers of all races, of all incomes, of all backgrounds, so that they can treat many of the people who look like them, quite honestly, so that they can have the sensitivity to deal with those issues. The third issue that I think is important here deals with more of a societal issue. Several weeks ago, on the front page of the Wall Street Journal, there was an article that talked about the construction boom that is occurring in the hospital industry right now. The construction boom is not occurring evenly throughout the country. Not surprisingly, the hospital construction boom is occurring in the most affluent parts of our country. What does that mean? That means that areas that there is more poverty, you are not seeing that type of private healthcare delivery system in place. In the city of Milwaukee, the reality is in the last year, we've had another hospital that basically served low-income people close. St. Michael's Hospital closed within the last year. We have Aurora still, we have the system, the hospitals they have, we have Columbia St. Mary's, we have St. Joe's, we have St. Francis, but to lose St. Michael's means that there's another area of our city that is underserved as a result of that closing. At the same time, we are seeing the construction of hospitals in much wealthier areas. We have to deal with that reality. We as a society have to deal with that reality. If the private hospital system is going to serve the more affluent areas, we are left with two choices. One, we do not serve people who live in the poorer areas, or we step up to the plate and recognize that public health is going to play a larger role here. That having public health involved in this is going to play a larger role both in the prevention of diseases and getting people into the system. It is important to have a presence in public health because it brings the community into the healthcare system. And quite honestly, I think that this will be a huge, huge benefit for the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, because it will tie the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee even closer to the community. Carlos Santiago has done a great job of moving this university forward, and he knows how important it is to be a partner with the city of Milwaukee, and I've enjoyed working with him. And so I think that this would be great for the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. I think it would be great for the entire system. The final point that I want to make is I understand from your comments and from my conversations with the governor that we have limited resources. I can tell you that I have not seen a level of community support like I have seen for this initiative in the city of Milwaukee before. There are foundations, there are private individuals, there are corporations, I think there are hospital systems that recognize how important this is to the city of Milwaukee, to southeastern Wisconsin, to the entire state. And I am prepared to do the heavy lifting to work with you to get those interests involved in this so that we can make this a reality for this entire state. So again, I thank all of you for the support that you've given us up to this point. I am here today to specifically ask you to accept and endorse, or whatever the formal term is that you use for this report. And the reason that that's so important is I think that a positive action by the Board of Regents will allow me, the Chancellor in Milwaukee, those who are interested in this, to go to those private individuals and those corporations and those foundations and say, look, the University of Wisconsin Regents understand and endorse the importance of this. Now it's your turn to jump up to the plate. This is going to be a true partnership if it happens. You obviously are very important partners. So again, I thank you very, very much for everything you've done. I'm very excited about this, and I'm hopeful that we can keep the ball rolling. I think we've got momentum building, and I think the key here is to keep the momentum going. So if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
The mayor mentioned at the beginning of the 20th century, the university making public health a priority under the banner of the Wisconsin idea. Well, I think, presuming the full board votes to endorse the report on the School of Public Health at UW-Milwaukee today, I think we're doing that same thing with that action that the university did about a century ago. And there's another piece to this. About a month or 2 or 3 ago, 4 legislators, 2 from both sides of the aisle in the Senate and 2 from both sides of the aisle in the Assembly, approached me and said, you know, we really got to do something about the issue of health care costs in Wisconsin. It's a national issue, obviously. How do we get our hands around that? We have some ideas, but we would like to draw on the resources of the university to help inform that debate and any public policy formation that would ensue from that debate. So we have begun now to work with those legislators and their colleagues on that very, very important issue, which isn't public health in the narrow sense, but is public health in the much broader sense. So we'll keep you informed at some point as that work builds with the legislature and the state government. We'll come back and give you a report on exactly what we're doing with them. But I was pleased that the legislators, quite frankly, thought of the university in that regard and came to us, and we responded quickly with some folks from the School of Medicine and Public Health here at Madison and elsewhere. We'll be drawing other people in from around the system as well. Yes.
Mayor, I'd like to thank you also on behalf of the Board of Regents, not only for your presentation today, but for your coming before us 14 months ago and delivering a very strong message that I think we've been responsive to. But just as important is your willingness to work with everyone, including the University of Wisconsin Medical School and School of Public Health, because while we all need to work together going forward on this, we also need the synergies that they've offered you, and I know they appreciate the cooperation, and this report that you've come up with is certainly the best evidence we've seen of what we can all do as we move forward together. Thank you.
Well, today we have an opportunity to share our appreciation for 2 individuals as we say farewell to them. Cora Merritt and Margaret Lewis have both been highly trusted advisors in their respective areas of expertise to UW presidents, and including me, and to this board. I'd like to invite Regent Davis to the podium to present a resolution of appreciation for Cora Merritt. Regent Davis.
Mayor Barrett, I can't tell you how not only pleased but thrilled I am with your passion and leadership on this very important issue for Milwaukee. So I've said this to you privately, publicly. I'll say it throughout this process, this journey we're on, but I just can't thank you enough for your leadership in this regard. Fellow Regents and guests, This is a day that some of us, probably most of us in this room, just weren't looking forward to seeing come to fruition, and that is with very, very mixed feelings, I think, and emotions. The day to say farewell to Cora Merritt and to express our appreciation for a considerable amount of dedication, work, passion, etc. And as I was thinking about, many of you know that I'm better when I just speak from the heart and it comes through sincerely as opposed to being scripted. So, Cora, I want you to know, as a true reflection of how much admiration I have for you, I don't have a script. And that's on purpose, just so you know. So as I thought about this, I said, what kind of words come to mind, not just from me, but I think just as I think about all of the people that you've touched in your career, and most recently in your role as what is your title? Senior Vice President for Academic Affairs. And I think of words like brilliant. I think of words like class, as in classy. I think of words like leadership, absolute passion, a person who epitomizes the principles of continuous learning. I think of ethical. I think of high integrity. I think of dedication to service. I think of spice. I think of humor. I think of hardworking. I think of pistol, as in not gun. And I can go on. And as you all think, you probably have some similar words or other words when you think about Cora, because she's really easy in that regard to define. She walks the talk around academic excellence and commitment to same. And on a personal note, I have to say, how many years have we been here, Jesus? 3? Oh, we're on 4? Okay. In our 4 years, Cora is hugely responsible for my understanding about the importance of the academic side of what we do. Not to say that I underestimated it, but I quite honestly have to say, being the emotional being that I am, that I'm pretty much now having a greater understanding in a deeper way about the role of the Regents, how we interact with chancellors to be most successful for the good of higher education and public higher education particularly. With our provost, Cora has introduced me to the provost in a very intimate way, which I very much appreciate. The commitment to diversity and the support for that, how that gets done in a university setting, I've learned a lot from Cora. And so when I think about my maturity, if one would grant me that I am acting maturely, a lot of that has been due to the interaction with Cora, and most recently as chair of education. So I want to, in a heartfelt way, say thank you personally for my growth and learning and development, Cora. And then I think on behalf of all of us to wish you the absolute best in your next phase of your journey in Washington, D.C. with the National Science Foundation. Our loss, their gain. But we can't thank you enough for the legacy that you will be leaving behind. And so with that, I'd like to read the resolution of appreciation that is expressed on behalf of all of us. So whereas Cora B. Merritt has served the University of Wisconsin system for more than 5 years with humor, grace, aplomb, leading the Office of Academic Affairs in advancing education as a public good that can build the human resources necessary for Wisconsin's future, and whereas Merritt has integrated the work of academic affairs and encouraged collaboration across the units of academic diversity and development, policy analysis and research, learning and information technology, and academic and student affairs, student services, and whereas the state's public university system is enhanced due to Merritt's insistence that quality and student success drive the University of Wisconsin system's program planning, faculty development, collegiate transfer, international education, and PK-16 collaboration, and whereas she has demonstrated a deep commitment to and respect for shared governance, building community with constituent groups throughout the UW system, including the provost, faculty, academic staff, and student representatives, and whereas Cora has shared her profound understanding of diversity as a societal imperative that plays a critical role in developing an educated citizenry dedicated to strengthening democracy and advancing equal opportunity for all people, and whereas CORA's vision for inclusive excellence is evident across university efforts such as the Inclusivity Initiative, Women's Studies Consortium, Equity Scorecard Project, the President's Council on Diversity, Wisconsin's Alliance for Minority Participation, statewide public health initiatives, and the University of Wisconsin System's Liberal Education and America's Promise Initiative. And whereas Cora is nationally known and respected for her roles and insight on higher education issues, and her optimistic vision and actions in the face of adversity and challenge will be a legacy that continues to improve the quality and future of public higher education in Wisconsin. Be it therefore resolved that the University of Wisconsin System Board of Regents extends its most sincere gratitude to Cora B. Merritt for her service to the university and the state of Wisconsin, and extends its best wishes as she begins her work with the National Science Foundation.
This is incredible. I've really not looked forward to a time like this because I remember how many profound words have been spoken behind this podium. But then I recalled, with the exception of people such as Mayor Barrett, most of those words were forgotten in a very short time. So that made me a lot more comfortable. I appreciate the recognition, but I do want to indicate that today and my departure will not spell my termination with the University of Wisconsin System and with the state of Wisconsin. In the first place, I moved to the National Science Foundation on what NSF regards as a reassignment from my faculty position. I've been a faculty member. In fact, I acquired tenure on the Madison campus in 1974. And so I am really moving in connection with that appointment. That means I'm still a part of the system. Also, there are strong connections between the system and the state and the portfolio I'll oversee at the National Science Foundation. For example, one of my divisions, and you see I'm calling them mine now, the Division of Undergraduate Education supports programs at UW-Oshkosh, UW-Eau Claire, UW Green Bay. Almost all of our institutions in this system have support through the Division of Undergraduate Education. Another of the divisions, the Division of Human Resource Development, is a source of funding for the program Opportunities for Wisconsin Women in Science, Technology, and Engineering, as well as for the statewide Wisconsin Alliance for Minority Participation. I've been pleased to serve as the chair of the governing board and I have already stepped down for that activity, but I'm convinced that what the WisCant will do will have its profound benefits for the state and beyond. The technical colleges in this state participate extensively in another of the programs in my portfolio, Advanced Technological Education. Even one of the programs, and I'm not quite clear how this fits, there is connection in the state to a program called Experimental Program to Stimulate Competitive Research, EPSCoR. One of the things you do in Washington is make sure you know all the acronyms. I said, I'm not sure how this happens because EPSCoR, the funding is for states that do not draw a lot of support through the competitive process at National Science Foundation. So Wisconsin is not an EPSCoR state, but it suggested to me the creativity of our colleagues that they found a way to make sure there are connections as well to EPSCoR. Then there's another interesting connection. A friend of mine with the Council of Chief State School Officers called me shortly after the appointment to describe the connections that exist between the Directorate for Education and Human Resources, my responsibility, and the Council. Well, you can imagine the pride I could express when I said, not only do I know about the Council, but I know the President-elect of the Council of Chief State School Officers and have taken pride in working very closely with Regent Burmaster, Regent Superintendent Burmaster. Those connections then will certainly be retained. Those are only some of the connections. I anticipate that the connections will expand. Now, what's my reason for saying that? Well, first, I've had no shortage of friends from across the country since this announcement was made. There are people who are drawing on all kinds of things, such as they might have known one of my nieces when they were in kindergarten together. I've also heard from just a handful of people, and expect I'll hear from more within this state and within this system about we will be in contact. I just make one request. Please don't hold me personally responsible if the funding does not go up from National Science Foundation to everything within Wisconsin, but I will be there. Now, I hope there will be connections as well to a shared sense of values about the importance of education. The core values for the National Science Foundation, outlined in its most recent strategic plan, resonate, I hope, with those that permeate higher education. Let me tell you what those ideas, what this vision, the core values. It starts, at NSF, we are visionary, imagining the future, working at the frontier, realizing the full potential of people, furthering promising ideas wherever and whenever they arise, and encouraging creativity and initiative. At NSF, we are dedicated to excellence, continually improving our ability to identify opportunities, investing optimally the resources entrusted to us, managing a diverse, capable, motivating organization. At NSF, we are broadly inclusive, seeking and accommodating contributions from all sources, while reaching out especially to groups that have been underrepresented, serving scientists, engineers, educators, students, and the public across the nation, and exploring every opportunity for partnerships, both nationally and internationally. And finally, at NSF, we are accountable, operating with integrity and transparency, maintaining quality and relevance in administration, management, and oversight. When I've had, and I can tell you I've had it from a lot of my friends around in Washington, when they've asked me the one question, are you completely stupid? What in the world led you to try to, in this these changing times, to take on such a responsibility? And my response is, this is the kind of vision that sustains me. This is what I've been interested in, seeking to do, as I've been a part of this system. I'm not going to be backing away from those kinds of commitments. I believe that what must sustain us all is a vision of the world we want. And I was pleased to participate in a project with that title that Dr. Peter Karoff, the father, incidentally, of Rebecca Karoff, our own Rebecca Karoff. I was pleased to participate in a project that he led. The interviews and essays in the resulting volume from that project are affirming, for they show just how widespread is the terrible ache to see things put better in this world. I've taken those statements, those words, from former Senator Bill Bradley in his comments on this volume. I'm sustained then by the power of human connections to the dreams we share. So let me end by thanking you for the connections you forged across so many sectors, and know that I anticipate no break in my connections to the ideas and the ideals for which you stand. So thank you.
Next, I'd like to invite Regent Rosenzweig to the podium to present a resolution of appreciation to Margaret Lewis.
Good morning, fellow Regents and friends. Today, I have the privilege of actually looking at two former colleagues, and before I celebrate Margaret, I wanted just to thank you personally, Mayor Barrett, for taking leadership on an issue that maybe many politicians don't want to touch. It's not exactly glitzy and glamorous, but it is at the heart of where we all live, and it makes the difference between life and death. And I just am very touched by it, and I wanted you to know that. Now, to another former colleague of mine at the legislature. Now, you might wonder why I've tied the two together. And I wanted you to know that I'm kind of, as you know, of an age. So I came to the legislature a little bit older than most of my colleagues. And I had the opportunity of looking at my colleagues in a different way. And there were some that just emerged as the best and the brightest. And they were two, and I'm not just saying it because they're here, that were really passionate about public service. And it struck me that I was seeing in front of me Margaret Lewis, Tom Barrett, who would be, I hoped, before us for a long time, promoting public service. Today we're here to celebrate Margaret's public service, specifically. And Margaret, I think I was at the podium when you left the legislature, celebrating you then. And there's sadness today because Margaret's leaving us to go on, I hope, to another public service. I think at that time I said, I expect to see you back, Margaret, and bigger and better things. She was, in fact, my mentor. Now, all of you who know me know I have a pugnacious side. Just a little bit. Margaret gave me a book one time when I was having a particularly difficult time getting to yes. Do you remember that, Margaret? It was just a very subtle reminder. There are different ways to achieve your goals. I want you to think about achieving your goals and how we can help and be with you on your journey higher and higher. So today, we're here to celebrate Margaret. And we have a resolution for you, Margaret. All of those whereases that I've come over the years to wonder about, but they are, in your case, just all of them very good and very, very much tied to your accomplishments. So, Margaret S. Lewis, whereas, has earned a wide recognition and respect during her career in public service roles in the University of Wisconsin system and the state of Wisconsin, serving with honor, integrity, and distinction for nearly 3 decades. And whereas, as Associate Vice President for University Relations, Margaret has been trusted advisor to the President, Vice Presidents, Chancellors, and the Board of Regents as she managed public and government relation efforts for the UW system. And whereas Margaret's accomplishments include vigorously representing our interests with elected officials. She drew upon her years of experience to promote beneficial legislation and to work with stakeholders to ensure the university's success, getting to yes. Whereas Margaret's accomplishments include leading campaigns to ensure the best possible biennial budgets with state support for the University of Wisconsin system, recognizing the opportunity for a UW system federal relations program, and managing legislative communications about complex state matters, including collective bargaining, tuition, fees, services to veterans, employees' benefits, and salaries. And whereas Margaret sought a higher level of coordination among UW's legislative liaisons and the public information officers around the state toward ensuring more cohesive representation of all UW's institutions. Whereas Margaret was elected to 3 terms as a representative of the 38th District in the Wisconsin State Assembly, where from 1985 to 1991, she was a proud supporter and advocate for the UW system, and was the first Wisconsin legislator to propose the new faculty and academic staff becoming immediately eligible for employer contributions toward health insurance legislation, and she was instrumental in helping to pass during her service to the university as well. Whereas Margaret is a skilled diplomat who has combined her passion for education, her legislative experience, and her political experience to successfully build bridges between academia, politics, and Wisconsin communities in the true spirit of the Wisconsin idea. Be it therefore resolved that the Board of Regents of the University of Wisconsin system offers its most sincere gratitude to Margaret S. Lewis for her service and dedication to the University of Wisconsin system and to the state of Wisconsin, and wishes her well in future endeavors. Thank you for doing the heavy lifting, Margaret. You are indeed a star. Thank you.
Probably do also speak better spontaneously, but I also meander, and I know you have a very important schedule, and so I'm going to try to stick to these remarks very quickly. And thank you so much, Regent Rosenzweig and the board, for your very generous comments. When I was asked to come to work for the UW system over 12 years ago, I had recently returned from a trip to Japan for which I was nominated as a state legislator by former Chancellor Donna Shalala. This international study experience, meeting with leaders from government, agriculture, business, and education, transformed my perspective on what was important to the future success of our state and our nation. At the time, American manufacturing jobs were shifting to the Pacific Rim. There was great uncertainty about the future competitiveness of our people and economy, and whether we could sustain the quality of our life and leadership in the world. Quality circles were on every business leader's minds. What I learned was that we didn't need to be more like Japan, but more like us, the title of James Fallow's book that year. Japan was strong because of its groups. We were strong because of our individuals and our diversity. Opportunity in Japan was limited to those who made the right choices beginning in grade school. It became clear that our culture and democracy, which encourage experimentation, risk-taking, and acceptance of mistakes and the learning that comes with those mistakes, was a huge strength. We were strong because we are creative, because we assimilate new people and ideas and adapt to change in an ever-changing world. Fallow said, when ordinary people believe they have a fair chance, they usually do their best, and the whole country benefits from those efforts. when ordinary people believe they have a fair chance. This is what our country provides with its access to a quality public higher education system, and this is why I chose to commit many years of my life to preserving and enhancing higher education opportunity. Not only does our system provide a fair chance, it provides many a second chance, something that just doesn't exist in many parts of the world. I've enjoyed working with outstanding chancellors, presidents, regents, and talented staff that are here in this room and around the UW system. Thank you for this opportunity and for your own dedicated, passionate work in this regard. We can't be satisfied with any lost children, as President Riley observes. Other states like North Carolina, parts of this country like the South in general, and parts of this world like India and China understand and are investing in the power of higher education. Wisconsin must reinvest in access for all its residents and understand that we cannot allow our talented pool of faculty, academic staff, and leadership to become second-rate. Our reputation cannot be sustained on words of support alone while state support stagnates. This year, the UW system will receive less state tax support than it did in 2002. In real terms, of course, that is a cut entirely sustained in the past 4 years, while state support for ineffective property tax relief and Medicaid soared. As a result, 40% of today's UW system campus classes are taught by non-tenured or non-tenure track faculty. This is not to say that academic staff aren't very capable, but academic staff and TAs teach the other 40%. And we are educating 7,000 fewer adult or non-traditional students than 10 years ago. We promise undergraduates a world-class university education. We promise adults hope of a better and more financially secure future, and we are not delivering on either of those promises. Endeavors to improve financial aid, such as the Covenant, the Hold Harmless, now ACE opportunity grants, veterans tuition remissions proposals recommended by the board for inclusion in the next biennial budget, and the competitive compensation plan being submitted today begin to address these concerns. It's up to all of you to see these efforts through. Our future and that of future generations depends on it. I offer my very best wishes in this endeavor. I will always be a proud alum and a lifelong advocate as I move on to other phases of advancing our public institutions. So don't forget to keep me on the Friends of the University of Wisconsin System's mailing lists. Thank you again, all of you.
Let me add my personal thanks to Cora and to Margaret for their tireless service to the university and to all the citizens of Wisconsin, and for being the very gracious and elegant people that they are. It's been my privilege to work with both of them. A few words about the growth agenda for Wisconsin. The approaching end of the calendar year means that we are getting closer to the official start of the state budget season. The governor's budget, as you know, is typically unveiled about a month after the first of the year. I'm pleased to report that now, as the budget is being developed, people all over the state are stepping up to voice their support for the growth agenda for Wisconsin. We now have more than 40 letters and resolutions of support on file from business leaders, community organizations, and academic governance groups, and I'll be delivering those and the ones we get in meanwhile to the governor in a meeting coming up shortly. I told you about several of these in October and November. Briefly, here's a review of what we've heard since. Whitewater City Manager Kevin Brunner wrote on behalf of UW-Whitewater saying that the city welcomes the opportunities for economic growth that would come with UW-Whitewater's plans to add an additional 1,000 students over the next 5 years. The mayor of Wausau, James Tipple, and Roger Luce, the executive director of the Wausau Region Chamber of Commerce, both wrote to endorse the growth agenda collaboration between UW-Platteville and the UW colleges that would provide opportunities for engineering education in Marathon County. They tell us that this education would help retain and expand companies in Wausau and develop the workforce in the local economy. Douglas Pearson of the Oshkosh Industrial Development Corporation described UW-Oshkosh's growth agenda as an important public policy initiative and wrote to report that the 33 members of his board of directors unanimously voted to support it. We know that several advocates from the La Crosse area have directly asked Governor Doyle to urge the UW-La Crosse Growth and Access Plan be included in the governor's budget. These advocates include James Hill, the executive director of the La Crosse Area Development Corporation, Bud Miyamoto, the executive director of La Crosse's Downtown Main Street Inc., Janie Spencer, executive director of the UW-La Crosse Alumni Association, and Dick Granchilak, president of the La Crosse Area Chamber of Commerce. Finally, we've received additional support from those who will play a big role in making the growth agenda for Wisconsin a reality: our faculty, academic staff, and students. Both the UW Stout Academic Staff Senate and Faculty Senate have passed resolutions in favor of the growth agenda, joining their colleagues at UW River Falls and UW Superior. And we now have the official support of the UW Green Bay Student Association, which has noted how the growth agenda will help achieve success and affordability for UW students now and in the future. Coming up, the governor and the legislators will be hearing more about the growth agenda from advocates in Pierce, Polk, and St. Croix counties. Our friends with the United St. Croix Valley Legislative Days, working with Chancellor Don Betts, have said they will be advancing the UW system growth agenda in its entirety as a legislative priority. They plan to urge the governor to fully fund the growth agenda as part of his budget, and they will visit legislators in mid-February to talk more about the importance of the plan for the state. So my sincere thanks to all of these advocates for helping to advance the growth agenda at this important time in the development of the governor's budget. I'll see that any additional statements of support we received for the growth agenda are shared with you on this board and others as appropriate over the next several weeks. This is a key time in terms of our advocacy efforts for the growth agenda, and my thanks to all of you who reached out to individuals and organizations around the state to garner that support. I'll be off on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday next to UW Parkside and environs and UW Stevens Point and environs to meet with groups on the campus and editorial boards and chambers and Rotary types organizations to continue to advocate for their support for the growth agenda with the help in those cases of Chancellor Keating and Chancellor Bunnell. So I look forward to that further interaction and hope to get further statements of support as a result of those visits. A few words about our communications and external relations team here at System. As you know, we've spent the last several weeks completing searches for new members of our Office of UW System Communications and External Relations, and I'm happy to report that that effort is now complete. And at least some of the team is here to meet you today, and I'll ask them to stand as I introduce them if they are here. I see some of them, and I think they all are. Dave is saying. Dave Giroux officially joined us 2 weeks ago as our new Executive Director of Communications and External Relations. He previously spent 6 years at UW Extension as the Director of Public Information, and he's held media, public relations, and management positions at Alliant Energy and the American Red Cross. And I told him that this agenda for this meeting was one of the easier ones. It's his first that he's had to deal with. So welcome, Dave. And as just announced this week, Grant Huber and Jessica Torme will be joining the team as Special Assistants for Communications and External Relations at the start of the new year. Grant is around the corner, I believe. Grant is now finishing. And Jessica, are you there too? Okay, good. Grant is finishing up his work in the office of State Senator Judy Robson. He previously served as a senior policy analyst for Senator Mark Miller, and he's an alumnus, a double alumnus of UW-Stevens Point and UW-Madison. And Jessica will be joining the university after her service as Chief of Staff and Legislative Director for State Senator Alberta Darling. Her previous experiences include working as a field director for U.S. Congressman Steve Gunderson. And Jessica is also a UW alumna, having spent her undergraduate years at UW La Crosse. This team, I think, includes a unique combination of experiences and skills in government relations, communications, media relations, and public policy. I'm confident that they, along with our existing staff and their colleagues at all the UW institutions, will help us revitalize how we demonstrate the value of the UW system to Wisconsin taxpayers and our other stakeholders. So welcome, both of you. Also joining us today for a special recognition is Erica Cowton. Where's Erica? There she is. Erica, welcome. Erica has recently retired as director of UW Extension's Business and Manufacturing Division. During her tenure there, the Small Business Development Center helped to double the amount of state funding available for entrepreneurs in Wisconsin. The SBDC, under her leadership, used web-based tools to assist people in starting companies and was the first state agency to offer second-stage entrepreneurs the chance to learn from their peers. Erica was also the chief architect of the Wisconsin Entrepreneurs Network, a statewide integrated client management system that now includes 75 members and serves more than 23,000 people. Erica's work was, in no small way, part of the reason the U.S. Commerce Department recognized Wisconsin as one of 2 states with very strong entrepreneurial performance. In honor of these many contributions, Erica was recently named the national winner of the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year 2006 award in the Supporter of Entrepreneurship category. And to accept the award last month, she traveled to Palm Springs, where she got to meet the ceremony's MC, Jay Leno. And no doubt had a good conversation with him because she is a Harley-Davidson motorcycle rider, so he's a big fan as well. So we're very grateful in the university for Erica's efforts. We know this was a very well-deserved recognition. She may be officially retired recently, but her work to improve the small business climate in this state leaves a legacy that will continue to strengthen Wisconsin's economy for years to come in the future. So please join me in congratulating her. Finally today, I'm pleased to share with you news about an award that will recognize several outstanding UW students, current students. As many of you know, the UW system recently presented 4 UW faculty members with the Underkoffler Excellence in Teaching Awards. These awards, sponsored by our colleagues at Alliant Energy, are one way to show appreciation for instructors who go the extra mile to ensure student success. But excellence in teaching is not the only standout quality that Alliant Energy and this university seek to reward. Instruction, after all, is only one half of the educational equation. Even with the best instructors, students who display the greatest commitment to their education are the ones who will experience the greatest success. Alliant Energy and former Regent Errol Davis, who is now the Chancellor of the University System of Georgia, both recognize the importance of dedication to academic pursuits as well as the different circumstances that come with being a student of color on UW campuses. To honor this academic dedication and Mr. Davis's contributions to higher education in Wisconsin, 4 students have been selected as recipients of the first Alliant Energy Errol B. Davis Jr. Achievement Awards. Alliant has generously created a $400,000 endowment for these awards. They honor the outstanding scholarship and community service of students from traditionally underrepresented minority groups pursuing a degree in business or engineering at UW-Madison or UW-Platteville campuses in Alliant's service area. We'll set aside some time to learn more about these students and formally present these awards at your meeting in February, and it's my hope that Errol will be able to join us for those awards at that time. So, Mr. President, that concludes my report.
Thank you. Next item is the report of the Physical Planning and Funding Committee. Regent South.
Well, thank you very much. Are we out of order, Madam Secretary, on this?
No, we're not out of order. Please proceed.
Following...
Regent Salas, you complain so much about where you meet. Can't you just take the initiative and...
But following on President Riley's recognition of national awards, and perhaps on a little lighter note, I just wanted to note that Joe Thomas from our University of Wisconsin Badger lineman was awarded the Outland Trophy.
At 318 pounds, that may be on a heavier note.
And even though we had outstanding linemen in past years, primary and others, Aaron Gibson, most recently McIntosh, and Paynes, nobody's won that award, so our hats off to Mr. Thomas. And we should note also that the women's volleyball team are playing in the NCAA regional tournaments in Austin, Texas.
Wait, sports podcast now or what? Whatever physical play is
9-1 as of last night, so that's it for the breaking news. Tune in and we'll report on the activities.
All right. Regent Salas, your committee will meet at the Cole Center. You win.
Mr. President, the Physical Planning and Funding Committee convened at its meager facilities. Nonetheless, a packed room full of participants. The minutes of the November committee meeting were approved, and the following resolutions were unanimously approved by the Physical Planning and Funding Committee, and now are presented to you as consent agenda items. Resolution 13B, brought by UW-Madison, request authority to enter into a land use agreement with the Olin House Trust to renovate Olin House and accept the completed renovations as a gift in kind. Chancellor Whitey reported to us that there had been a committee set up over the last year to determine exactly what should be done with the Chancellor's residence, including the renovation or selling the residence and using those proceeds and providing other facilities for future chancellors, or what they're doing today, or that is going ahead with the renovation. Chancellor Whitey is presently out of the Olin house, and the renovation is continuing, and when it is completed, the Board of Regents will receive it as a gift in kind. President Walsh, we know that there's been some questions in that, so we're pleased to report that all of the funds that are being presently spent on it are private contributions. No public monies are being spent on it. Resolution 13C requests authority to ask for the release of advance funds for the UW-Madison West Campus Utility Improvement Project to complete the design through bidding phase of the project. Resolution 13D, another UW-Madison request that asks to decrease the budget and scope of the Sterling Hall renovation project and to reallocate funds from that project to the Biochemistry 2 project and the West Campus Utility Improvement projects. Mr. President, originally the Sterling Hall renovation project was to accommodate the psychology department, but it's been the case with this very cumbersome process that we have in constructing or renovating our buildings that by the time the proper assessment of what the material costs were determined, the amount of space that was needed by the psychology department could not be billed under the authorized amount. Subsequently, the renovations that are being undertaken are not for the psychology department, but in fact will be used to for other departments in the construction of the education building and the contribution of the mortgage, and that surge that's going to occur and that space that needed until that particular project and other projects and classrooms that are made available will now be housed at Sterling Hall. I hope that at some time in the future, Mr. President, we can, the Board of Regents can be represented at the State Building Commission and in front of the legislature to deal frankly with this process that we have that that is so cumbersome and so costly, and that we can find and streamline the process over the time. Margaret Lewis has been very effective in terms of making the presentation, but we just haven't gotten the proper response and the type of processes that need to be changed in order to be more effective in building our buildings. And this is the Sterling Hall renovation is just one example of that of those problems. Resolution 13E requests authority to construct maintenance and repair projects at 2 of our campuses, a parking ramp repair project at UW-Madison, and the installation of a new chiller at UW-Milwaukee. Resolution 13F, and this I would like to indicate to you before I proceed that it's a 3-project resolution. 2 of the projects include increases for segregated fees, or that is the Davis Center at Eau Claire, and the renovation of the Memorial Union here at Madison, and the demolition and the construction of a new Union South, and also at the Madison campus. Now, the reason that that these projects are they're part of our 07-09 capital budget, but the reason that they're presented to you at this time is because the Madison project, and I think if you will recall, the report from the audit on the use of segregated fees indicated to you that campuses have a different means of how to engage their students in the expenditure, especially in the increases of segregated fees. Madison, if you will recall, they engage their students by providing referenda for these projects. And actually at Madison, and these projects that you have before you, the renovation of the Memorial Union and the construction of a new Union South actually was voted on twice, and most recently in October. And that's the reason why they're being presented to you at this time, although they're part of our 07-09 budget. In addition, after the vote was undertaken that approved the authority, some of the students appealed that decision to a judiciary process that they have, and the justices, all students, in fact, authorize the projects to go forward. I'm very happy to report. The Eau Claire, or the Davis Center project, Executive Vice President Don Mash joined us yesterday, and Dr. Bryan was also there, our President Chancellor. And the reason I mentioned the 2 chancellors is because this project was started when Don Mash was a chancellor at Eau Claire. And the project has a long history in coming to fruition, or that is coming before you for a design report. The Eau Claire campus and the delegation of 4 students, I believe they're all here, and also students from the University of Wisconsin, Madison projects that saw the increase in the segregated fees that I just indicated. So if you have any questions, I'm sure that these students will be available for any questions you might have. What's really interesting about the Davis project, or that is the project at Eau Claire, is in the latter stages what really moves the project to fruition is that it becomes an all-student design committee. And I know, again, in the audit report, there was a whole question of how we're going to accommodate input into students, whether it was just going to be on allocable or non-allocable funds. Well, the chancellor took caution to the wind, and the design committee for this union was an all-student committee, and it was really an extraordinary experience yesterday to have representatives from students at Madison and the group of students who are here from Eau Claire petitioning us for approval of this project. Then lastly, 13F includes UW Parkside's residence hall, and that is program revenue supported borrowing. The continuing resolution 13G requests authority to increase the budget of Chadbourne Residence Hall renovation project. Bids, again, as I was indicating earlier, of our cumbersome process, bids came in higher than expected for that project because of increased prices of materials and labor, and were so adjusted by the committee. These 6 resolutions, Mr. President, were passed unanimously by the committee, and I now move adoption of resolution 13B, C, D, E, F, and G.
Thank you, Regent Salas, and thank you for your thorough explanation and pointing out some interesting issues, which I assure you, you and I will be heard from on that building commission question, because that has been before them for a number of years.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Is there a second to the motion on the consent agenda?
Second.
We have a second. Is there a request to remove any item from the consent agenda? Seeing none, if not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. President, Assistant Vice President David Miller reported that the Building Commission approved approximately $50 million for the projects at their April meeting. The funding breakdown for those projects are $25 million general fund supported borrowing, $13 million program revenue, and $12 million gifts and grant funds. And that concludes my report, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Call on Regent Davis, report of the Education Committee.
I want to tell my fellow regents that I knew we were in trouble when my colleague Chuck Pruitt, co-chair of Business and Finance, came into my meeting 1 hour into the meeting, and his committee was over. I just thought that was amazing. I just thought, oh boy, we're in trouble. So anyway, Mr. President, I'm pleased to report the summary from yesterday's lengthy but productive meeting of the Education Committee. Our minutes were approved with some amendments to recognize certain motions that have been made at the previous meeting. First item on the agenda, of course, was the planning report on public health needs in Milwaukee. And I do want to note that we've got 2 patient people, maybe more, from that team, Commissioner of Health, Devin Baker, and Vivian Chen, who is Health Operations Director. Maybe you want to stand so we can thank you for being here. Provost Rita Chang introduced Bevan Baker, whom you now know, Commissioner of Health for the City of Milwaukee, and Randy Lambrecht, Dean of the College of Health Sciences, who were co-chairs of the planning team, which prepared the report, which has been sent to all members of the Board of Regents, and I'm sure we all have read it thoroughly. And though it's 230 pages, the report itself is 58, so, and it's a really, really well done report. Provost Chang also introduced the other members of the planning team who were also in attendance. Devin Baker and Randy Lambert then summarized the findings of the report. The planning team was charged with conducting a feasibility study for our School of Public Health in Milwaukee with the goals of identifying public health needs and academic resources, determining gaps in the resource base, and determining the best means of filling those gaps. The process involved bringing in 3 national public health experts. These experts reported that there is an obvious commitment to service and community engagement at UWM, and that UWM should be commended for recognizing the importance of public health in their community. The experts also reported that approximately $10 million in ongoing resources would be needed for School of Public Health. In addition, those same experts recognized that UWM was uniquely positioned and spoke very favorably about the fact that for accreditation purposes, UWM had 3 out of 5 of those accredited areas very well covered and had huge support for the other 2. The report presents data illustrating the serious public health problems faced by the city of Milwaukee, including infant mortality and immunization levels. The report also shows the need for additional public health workers in the city of Milwaukee. In addition to the presenters, we also had Chancellor Santiago, who in his very eloquent and concluding remarks indicated that the goal is to develop an accredited school of public health. An accredited school of public health will result in a highly qualified and diversified workforce, research that examines the root causes of public health problems, and strategies that improve overall health outcomes. The timeline for the School of Public Health involves working sequentially over 8 years to add faculty, facilities, and programs through our processes. Chancellor Santiago noted that work had already begun on raising additional resources and that he planned to use existing resources tied to his DIN request as part of the long-term plan. Other regents noted the importance of public health in the city of Milwaukee and commended UWM for its commitment to making contributions to the community. Michelle Bryant, legislative aide to State Senator Lena Taylor, also read a letter of support from State Senator Lena Taylor for a School of Public Health in Milwaukee and the findings of and recommendations of the report in general. In this regard, we also noted the need to send this report as a status report as a follow-up item to legislators who wrote our president, David Walsh, in July. So it was noted that we would have this report sent to those legislators at their request and in support of our initiative. As I did yesterday, I'd like to publicly thank UW Systems President Kevin Riley, UW Milwaukee Chancellor Carlos Santiago, and the Honorable Tom Barrett, Mayor of Milwaukee, for the leadership and vision they have exercised this past year. And I also want to thank, and did thank, Senior Vice President for Merit, UW Milwaukee Provost Rita Chang, and Ms. Sharon Cook, Director of Intergovernmental Relations for the City of Milwaukee, for accepting the charge they received from the 3 principals and putting together a dynamic planning team that resulted in a report that is filled with potential. And our resolution to that effect indicates it. So then we moved on and took up the UW Parkside Charter School contract extension. Chancellor Keating explained to the Education Committee that the 21st Century Preparatory School was first approved by the Board of Regents in 2002, and the Education Committee received a recommendation that the Board of Regents extend this contract for an additional 5 years. Dr. Paul Hobart, the director of the UW Parkside Charter School office, explained that the 21st Century Preparatory School is a very modern school with small class sizes, and actually it was described as an enviable facility, according to an expert who I can't remember what his name is.
Broad Page.
Thank you. Center of Education?
Yeah.
Thank you. The school has been financially supported by the Johnson Foundation and will be for, according to a 10-year plan. Is that right, Chris? Wasn't it?
5 more years.
5 more years, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. A review of community and faculty members found that the school had met community standards, and parents and staff were very positive. There is concern about 4th and 5th grade achievement, but overall they are pleased with the educational outcomes of the school. They had a vigorous conversation among the committee as a result largely of Regent Loftus's questions around mission fit and extension beyond for fewer than 5 years, etc. So I want you to know that we had a very robust conversation around that. Chancellor Keating was quite persuasive in his support, enthusiastic support for the recommendation that is contained in one of our items at the end of my report. Thirdly, we took up the criteria for the proposed expansion of liberal arts and pre-professional offerings at the Wisconsin Technical College system. I reminded the committee that we postponed action on this item in November and that this issue comes to us following legislative consideration almost 2 years ago of a bill that would have expanded the number of WTCS liberal arts institutions. At that time, both systems, the WTCS system and UWS, opposed that legislation on the grounds that the state statute 3631 provides for a process for expansion of collegiate transfer programs that requires approval of both of our boards. We are now utilizing that process. I reported that since last month's meeting, great conversations, progressive conversations have continued between our staffs, and as well as discussions with some board members. Mary Keene, president of WTCS board, Brent Smith, myself, Mike Spector, to name a few. Casts of thousands have had conversations around this issue, all working to get to yes. Okay. These discussions have resulted in significant progress with a few issues still remaining unresolved. So in the interest of neither delaying further consideration of a set of principles and guidelines nor the Chippewa Valley Technical College proposal, we agreed to schedule a special meeting of the Education Committee in January prior to the WTCS board meeting to consider a set of principles, guidelines, and criteria. Now what we expect will happen is that we will assemble a team of presidents, representative of presidents and chancellors, as well as our respective staffs, to actually continue the progressive conversation around what guidelines and principles make sense. We did have, we've had a different version than the one that was in our meeting materials, was a topic of discussion, and we knew that a lot of the principles involved in this issue needed to really thoughtfully go through that model, or that version, if you will, and actually work off of the concerns from both sides, if you will, toward an amicable set of guidelines and principles, and we're very optimistic that that will indeed happen, and that when we meet in January, we will indeed have something to recommend approval at our February meeting. We also determined that the Chippewa Valley Technical College proposal would be on the agenda in February, as previously noted. Next on our agenda were two academic program proposals. The first was a Master's of Science in Information and Communication Technologies at UW-Stout. The Education Committee reconsidered a proposal that was originally presented to it in March. UW-Stout Provost Julie Bovey presented the program. She described the program design and delivery. This is a distance-delivered program consisting of online and weekend courses offered throughout the state. The provost addressed the strong relationship of the program to UW-Stout's mission, the strong demand for professionals in the field, and the career opportunities for its graduates, and essentially, and in good faith, addressed the issues that we had in March beautifully. So, the second program on the agenda was the PhD in Communication at UW-Milwaukee. Provost Chang introduced Professor Mike Allen, Chair of the Department of Communication. Professor Allen described the PhD program and its need, and boy, is there a need, noting the national and state shortage of doctorally qualified faculty in the field. He described the program's focus on the practical consequences of communication on organizational goals and structures, processes of interpersonal communication and conflict resolution, and the conduct of public policy discussion. He highlighted the outstanding quality of the faculty and its strong community, national and international research focus on program strengths. This program has the potential to provide a cadre of diverse faculty to our state institutions of higher education, among many others. Next was the UW Systems Freshman Admissions Policy item. Senior Vice President Cora Merritt and Assistant Vice President Larry Rubin then provided background on the UW Systems Freshman Admissions Policy. Cora spoke eloquently about her concerns with the unintended consequences of some of the discussions that have surrounded admission into the University of Wisconsin system. Many of us, I think, have noticed that the closer that Cora gets to the date of departure, the more blunt she becomes. So, yesterday's conversation was no less direct and was hugely eloquent, and we all just kind of were enthralled. The discussions challenge our focus on diversity and imply that persons from underrepresented groups gain admission only if qualifications are overlooked, and that the benefits that result accrue only to these individuals. Such a position impacts real people. Cora also expressed how disheartening it is to hear from faculty and staff members that they have chosen to leave our institutions not for higher salaries or lower teaching loads, but in quest of more supportive settings. Cora noted that, quote, "a setting that is unwelcome to the different imperils opportunities for more than the underrepresented," unquote. As a member of the Wisconsin International Trade Council, Cora heard time and again that knowledge of different cultures and people serves the economic interests of the state. She reminded us of the positive work done by this board in support of diversity. The UW system was the first university system to adopt a long-range plan for racial diversity that was designed for diversity and was based on the belief that a public university must serve all of the people of the state and must lead the way in increasing educational opportunity for targeted racial ethnic groups and focusing on diversity as a critical component of a quality education for all students is an imperative. Senior Vice President Merritt and Assistant Vice President Larry Rubin went on to explain how the UW system examined its admissions policies and practices. And we need to remember that this examination actually started as a result of the Grutter cases, the Michigan cases 3 years ago, the Supreme Court decisions. And that, I think, is a factor that but those who are misinformed lose sight of. Anyway, the Office of Academic Affairs and General Counsel have been working with campus admissions officers to ensure that our admissions processes were educationally sound and helpful in achieving the educational benefits that flow from a diverse student body, consistent with our Board of Regents policy and in compliance with federal law. And as a result of this review, we were able to confirm that institutional admissions practices and procedures are supportive of academic quality, consistent with Board of Regents policy, and use a comprehensive review of academic and non-academic factors in a manner compliant with federal law. The analysis also showed that Board of Regents policies on admissions had not been reviewed during the past 6 years, with some of the policies, in fact, dating back to 1972. That analysis revealed, then, a need for some modifications in the statements regarding freshman admissions. These modifications are more about form and style than substantive changes. They include combining the documents into one coherent policy. Members of the Education Committee had numerous questions on things that elucidated or better informed us about admissions policies, including class rank, SAT, ACT tests, transfers from UW colleges and technical colleges, and we just had a free-reigning conversation that really, I think, increased the depth of understanding and knowledge that we have about how admissions actually works. And in fact, I can't remember which one of our colleagues said, this would be a really good idea if we had just this, I think it was Loftus.
You're surprised. Act like you're surprised.
That we actually have a topic of admissions and how it actually works across our institutions as an agenda item for the Education Committee in the future. I think we all agree that that would be great, as long as it fits within the goals that we've set for ourselves for the year. That's our guideposts. Anyway, there have been many public questions arising regarding admissions at Madison. So we were joined by Tom Reason, Associate Director of Admissions at Madison. And then later we were joined by Beth Weckmiller, Director of Admissions at UWM. So we were able to engage in further conversations and questions and comments covering admissions at those institutions. And then we had comments from the audience from various chancellors and provosts, and you had to be there. That's all I can tell you. The Education Committee decided that in the spirit of collegial relations, that further discussions need to be had with various legislators and the community about what this resolution is intending to do versus what it is not intending to do. And to that end, we also made sure that President Riley's response letter to Representative Nass was distributed at our committee meeting and added to the committee record. We therefore decided that further action on this item would be delayed until our February meeting. The final item on our agenda was the report of Senior Vice President Cora Merritt. She reported on the status of the UW Waukesha report. A financial analysis of a number of options have been prepared and forwarded to Chancellor Santiago and Wilson. They are in process of reviewing the report, and they will forward their conclusions to President Riley in January. Given Chancellor Santiago's health issues, there's been a slight delay, but we think we're on track in terms of being able to have a report for this board at its February meeting. Cora next reported on the 2007-08 sabbatical assignments. Noting the importance of this program to the UW system, its faculty, and its students, she indicated that the board establishes criteria which are then adhered to as our institutions consider sabbatical assignments throughout a competitive process. She reminded us that this is an unfunded program and that reports must be submitted through the provost's office by the faculty member following the sabbatical. As I'm sure you will agree, these assignments truly represent the broad array of areas of expertise of our faculty. Finally, Cora took the opportunity of our last meeting to share with us her thoughts on, quote, the role of academic leadership in planning for student success, unquote. She acknowledged the advice and input she's received from board members, provosts, faculty, and academic staff colleagues on the content of her message, and the fact that her husband Louis said, don't read all of that. Short. Or words to that effect, right, Cora? She referenced the Association of Governing Boards in stressing the committee's role on behalf of the entire board in supporting integral leadership, linking administrators, faculty, academic staff, and others into a well-functioning partnership purposefully devoted to a well-defined, broadly affirmed institutional vision. From the provost, she received the message that the chief academic officer must look to the future, out many years, to anticipate change that will occur. She suggested ways in which the board can ensure high-quality educational opportunities as the core mission, a message she included in her remarks in her remarks. Her remarks were a reminder of how much we will miss her vision, dedication, and commitment. So now, you understand why it took us to 4:15. So, with that, Mr. President, I have a proposed consent agenda of 3 resolutions and an additional resolution. The consent agenda is as follows, is proposed to be as follows. Resolution 11B, accepting the planning report on the public health needs of Milwaukee. Resolution 11D1, authorizing the Masters of Science in Information and Communication Technologies at UW-Stout. Resolution 11D2, authorizing the PhD in Communication at UW-Milwaukee.
We will take that first and then move back to the charter. I need a second on that consent resolution.
Second.
We have a second. Is there any item you'd like to remove from the consent agenda? Regent Bradley.
I'd like to remove 11B from the consent agenda.
All right. Any other items? Seeing none, all those in favor on the consent agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed. 11B, I'd like, we have a motion and a second. Regent Bradley. We have that already. Go ahead. Regent Bradley.
Been moved and seconded.
Yeah.
I just think it would be very helpful for the board, people on the board who weren't able to attend the education committee yesterday, to get the benefit of some of the discussion and some of the insight from Chancellor Santiago on what needs to happen now that we have this committee report and these recommendations. Chancellor Santiago, would you mind answering a couple of questions? In the report, it talks about there being 36 schools of public health in the country and 14 public health training centers, and it says none of them are located in the state of Wisconsin. The Wisconsin State Journal a couple of days ago made a big point of raising the question about our action today being the wrong way to go, and specifically suggesting that it was a waste of taxpayers' money to pursue this avenue. So I think it would be helpful to hear comments from you about if UWM pursues these recommendations made in this report, what is UWM going to be offering to the taxpayers to address these important needs in Milwaukee that aren't being done or can't be done as effectively by the existing School of Medicine and Public Health, which, by the way, is not an accredited school of public health? Could you comment on that so we get some clarity?
I'll be happy to. I think the important distinction is between an accredited school, which is accredited by public health professionals, and academic programs, which, as you all know, are at the heart of any school. Academic programs are accredited, and you can have academic programs without having an accredited school. In Wisconsin, both Madison, Milwaukee have been developing accredited academic programs, Masters of Public Health and Doctorates in Public Health. And that will continue to support the statewide issues in public health. An accredited school, however, does have to follow very specific requirements of the accrediting organization, which is, again, made up of public health professionals. What an accredited school provides is, one is membership into a large, wide organization, but a very exclusive organization. As you mentioned, there are 37 schools at this point across the nation. Those two schools can tap into particular resources that are available only to accredited schools of public health. And that's a very important part of this process. What we envision in Milwaukee is really a school that, while focused on Wisconsin, really looks at Milwaukee's and the larger Milwaukee area and its healthcare disparities. One of the things that we've talked about a lot in the construction of the school is really the collaborative nature of it, public and private partnerships, the regional focus, that workforce development, working with not only the city's Department of Health, but the state Department of Health. And I think what would make this school quite unique is that collaborative nature and is the local focus. And I think that with that school, it will make a significant impact over time in terms of the public health needs of the city. So we view it as a kind of a unique, among the 37, we want to be unique in how we approach the issues of public health. Because we think that's what Milwaukee needs at this time. Yes.
Sorry, just follow up.
Yes.
So, if UWM were to study these recommendations and come back to the Regents with a proposal to establish a school of public health, will the state of Wisconsin have 2 schools of public health?
There's nothing to preclude Madison's School of Medicine and Community Health from submitting an application for an accredited school of public health. I had mentioned in the discussion that we had yesterday that in New York State you in fact have 2 accredited schools of public health. You have one accredited school of public health, a private school of public health at Columbia University located in New York City that really focuses on addressing some of the public health disparities in the city. You have a second public School of Public Health, accredited also by the same organization in the state's capital, in Albany. And what made that school unique was that it was in partnership with New York State's Department of Health, which is the largest state Department of Health in the world, and in fact has the largest laboratories in Wadsworth Laboratories. So that made a lot of sense. Columbia was very easy to establish because of the location as well. So location in the case of Columbia, and partnerships in the case of Albany. What we want to do is, in a sense, bring those 2 together, have both the partnerships and the importance of the location. But there's nothing to preclude Madison from moving forward an accreditation process for an accredited school of public health. There is one caveat that is important, I think, to recognize. The medical culture and the public health culture are not identical. And where the medical culture is curative, the public health culture is preventive. And sometimes those cultures do not mix well. Sometimes you have public health professionals that don't want to work within a medical culture and vice versa. But there are some, you have physicians that have MPH degrees that understand the 2 as well. So I think certainly we would like a particular focus to the School of Public Health in Milwaukee, but there's nothing to preclude Madison from trying to go down that path as well.
Regents Office.
Yes. Thank you very much. Chairperson Dallas, thank you very much for responding to, I think, a very key question by Regent in terms of the differences between an accredited school as such as you described. Regent Bradley, I also read that article. I believe it was an editorial. Yes, right. It was an editorial, rather than a news article. And I was fascinated by the fact that, and I agree with the the editors of that newspaper about the outstanding work that the University of Wisconsin Hospitals has done. It's an outstanding institution, but Milwaukee's a long way from this place. Those 90 miles might as well be the favelas of Rio in Brazil or Sub-Saharan Africa, or the community that I come from, which is one of the most deprived communities in the areas that we're talking about right now. If you look at the public health schools, there's a map here in this report of where these institutions are. Draw an arc around, draw a U around the Great Lakes region, and there's a handful of these schools. If you go from this Great Lakes region west, no public accredited schools in the field. So you could just assume that the Plain States and the reservations that are isolated out there are just deprived of any of this kind of activity that we're engaging today. If you go southwest, you won't find another schools like the one that we're contemplating today until you get to California, Arizona, New Mexico. Most of Texas is devoid of this kind of discussion that we have today. So I move that that we move forward on this proposal, and I think that the explanation that the chancellor gave in distinguishing between an accredited school, the kind of collaboration that we're trying to put together, the commitment by the mayor and the health department is unique. And today, Mayor Barrett told us additionally, without mentioning any amounts of money or identifying the corporation, that there's more resources there, that we don't have to go to the legislature for the total amount of money that's needed to get it off the ground. So I think I'm very encouraged by by all this support and collaboration, and I congratulate you, Chancellor Santello. I'm sorry that after your illness you had to sit so long these last 2 days. I'm sure it's been uncomfortable, but we appreciate your contribution.
We have a motion, a second on 1B1. Any other discussion? Just a comment from the chair. It's obvious that we have a learning curve, and certainly the decision makers will have a learning curve on the distinctions and the resources and the capabilities of our various schools. But I think it's time we get going with it. Any further comments?
Dave, I would just make one to respond to what Mark said. When we worked out that arrangement last year with the naming of the school here in Madison, one of the aspects of the whereas clauses or of the agreement is that the people at the School of Medicine and Public Health in no way thought that there should not be a school somewhere else. They were very direct about that and supportive of the concept at that time.
Any further discussion?
Just one quick one, and that was to support something that the Chancellor mentioned, and that is that it is unique, and as I understand it, it's not been done yet, to have a School of Medicine and a School of Public Health accredited School of Public Health. So this would be, are there two now?
They were grandfathered.
Right,
Before.
four.
No, but
They haven't been new ones. And I think it may give UW-Madison Medical School, I'm a great fan of, an opportunity to look at a different model, and I think that's exciting. It certainly does give us in Milwaukee the opportunity to do something special in collaboration with that community where the needs are so striking. Populations are so crying for that to occur, and the hope that it would deliver, I think, is something that we can't even measure. So I don't know, I think it's kind of interesting that it was the Wisconsin State Journal that took the editorial against it, and it was the our community newspaper. They probably wouldn't like to hear that. The Milwaukee Journal, who came out strongly in support of it, because perhaps it's one of those issues that you have to be there to know about.
On the motion.
And one other quick thing. Let's be mindful of, it's contained in this report, and Carlos was really eloquent about this yesterday. This reflects collaboration with the School of Medicine and Public Health, with the Medical College of Wisconsin, with the city's health department, and on and on. This is not, with UWM as the hub of the School of Public Health. So, as it should be, because of all of the issues in Milwaukee, UWM is the hub, but it does anticipate and expect greater collaboration, recognition of current collaborative efforts, and a greater expansion of collaboration between all of those institutions, including UW-Madison's School of Medicine and Public Health. So I just want us to be mindful that this is not a zero-sum game or us versus them or anything such a thing. It's who should be at the helm of it, and I think we are all by hopefully encouraging that they go forward with the planning. And we're saying, yeah, we think this is the appropriate distribution, I guess, of roles and responsibilities.
Any further discussion?
I just want to be clear on the motion. We're not voting in a school today. We're just voting that a committee considers the school as a look. Correct?
Well, to that end,
Well,
I wanted to read the resolution so that we're clear.
Well,
about what it
we don't have to read it, it's before us, and we should understand that the resolution is what the resolution is, and it's not what people think it is, it's what it is. And we've got to be a little careful here when we suggest collaboration equals the word responsibility. This resolution is clear on its face, it's not ambiguous. We want to move forward, but there's going to be lots of discussion, lots of learning curve, lots of funding issues, and lots of different responsibilities. So we have a resolution in front of us. Any further discussion? Seeing none, on the resolution 1.1.b. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay, Mr. President, I have one final.
Well, we have another resolution yet.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Okay.
I have one final resolution.
All right.
And it is
1.1.
1.1B2. No, that's not it.
No, it's 1.1.e Parkside School.
Authorizing the extension to the charter school contract.
Yeah. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
And that
That concludes. Thank you very much. Call on.
Mr. President,
Yes.
before we leave the Education Committee, may I make a comment on the deferral of our action on the admissions policy?
That's fine.
I think I support that action of the Education Committee, and I strongly support consolidation and update of the freshman admission policy. And even more than that, I support strongly the use of multiple and comprehensive success indicators in an admission policy. But I do think that we need to take time to analyze this issue. I think we need to understand how that policy will be applied, and even more important, I think the public needs to understand how that policy will be applied. There's a great deal of misinformation out there, and these are maybe items that you discussed yesterday, but I want to raise it. I think that it's very important that the public understand this policy. Secondly, I think it's important that the public have an opportunity to provide input, and that the people that you refer to, President Walsh, as decision makers have a opportunity to provide input to the policy. And finally, something that I haven't heard discussed, but I have discussed with President Walsh and Ms. Brady, the Supreme Court this week heard arguments in two cases involving the application of a race as a factor in assigning students to in school districts to particular schools, K through 12. I recognize that there are differences in that case from the University of Michigan case and that the principles applicable in that case, but I would be very surprised if, when the Supreme Court decides these cases that were heard this week, which will be sometime in the next 2 or 3 months, that I'd be surprised if there aren't applications of the decision to our
admissions policy, the provisions, discussion of the court's view of the 14th Amendment, and it may require or may be desirable for us to adjust or tweak the admissions policy at that time to correspond with that decision. So I guess what I'm saying is that I think that the admission of our children and grandchildren to University of Wisconsin is a cherished objectives of many of us who are residents of Wisconsin, and I think we should take the time necessary to consider this policy and make sure that it reflects the very best work that we can put together in adopting it.
Regent Crane?
In discussing this in these future months, I also think it's important that part of the discussion be the way that this universal policy, as it relates to the system, how it affects individual institutions, because there is a difference in how this plays out right now in comparing Madison especially and some of the other institutions with others of our campuses. And I think I very much support one policy. I think that's important but it does have a different effect on these
Regent Clark.
I'd like to suggest as a Board of Regents that we all get a better understanding of the admission policy because we will be asked about it, but I think that every regent should know what the admission policies are in the university system.
Any other comments? We have been discussing this, and I think our challenge is obvious. One is that we've got to get it right, and secondly, we need to communicate it. And to do that, we're going to have to spend some time on this. The deferral was really a recognition that we need to ask for and receive more input from either the legislative leadership and the legislators, but certainly the public, and be careful how we describe it. These are tough decisions, but this is, at the end of the day, I predict it will be pretty easy to do it. We just need to get it right, and that's the purpose of the deferral. And hope we're looking into having some public hearings on this, both from input from professionals as well as the public and anybody else interested. Any other comments on this? Okay, I guess we're done with your report, and we could move on now to Regent Pruitt, and would you please give your report?
Thank you, Mr. President. The Business, Finance, and Audit Committee met for report and action on the 2007-09 unclassified pay plan recommendations for faculty, staff, and academic leaders. Since all the regents were there already, I will not report on the conversation other than to simply emphasize again what I think we all heard yesterday about the importance of a solid pay plan to our goal of recruiting and retaining the best faculty, academic staff, and academic leaders to provide a quality educational experience for our students. Because of the significance of this resolution, noting that it requests, just to remind us, 5.23% per year for 2 biennia, full funding from state GPR in order to hold tuition to cost of living and potentially the lowest tuition in the Big Ten, and ask once again, in the interests of fairness and competition, that we provide domestic partner benefits to our employees. I suggest we vote separately on this resolution rather than putting it at the end of the report, and therefore, on behalf of the Business, Finance, and Audit Committee, I move the adoption of Resolution 1.2.8.
You've heard the motion. There's a second from Regent Rosenzweig. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried.
Mr. Vice President, the Business, Finance, and Audit Committee met, then reconvened upstairs, and we began at 12:30, and we concluded at 1:30, which I have been told is the shortest meeting on record for the Business, Finance, and Audit Committee.
We would like to commend your staff, Ms. Durkin, for accomplishing that.
I think that is absolutely the case. I was also, though, in addition to Vice President Durkin, I've been trying to figure out how was it possible that we only met for 1 hour. And I think it was because we started the meeting in this room, and we were inspired by the portrait of former Regent President Toby Wheels Up Martin, who inspired us all to sort of get to it and get through it. And so we did.
I thought we were in this room. You were in your
We were all in it together
to start out.
But anyway, we did have an hour-long meeting, a very brisk meeting, and I would now turn to Regent Brent Smith, to offer a report on at least the first half of this very, very short meeting.
Thank you, Chairman Pruitt, and thank you for the efficient manner in which you ran that meeting. Associate Vice President Chris presented the committee with a proposed resolution adopting a system-wide policy requiring criminal background checks for all new hires prior to employment. He noted that while some of the governance groups have voiced their opposition, and I think we have got some of those materials to the new proposed policy, others have been supportive, and others have believed the policy needs some more work. This resolution will be presented at the end of the committee report as a consent resolution. As you know, last February, the board endorsed a new process whereby periodically a review of individual chancellor salaries would be performed to determine whether there was a need for an adjustment, to recognize competitive factors, or to correct salary inequities. President Riley presented his recommendations with regard to 3 chancellors. The committee discussed those and enthusiastically and unanimously approved salary adjustments for chancellors at UW Green Bay, Oshkosh, and Parkside under this new process. That resolution will be presented as well at the end of the committee report as a consent resolution. Chairman Pruitt.
Thank you. We then heard from Jane Radu, the Assistant Director of Office of Operations Review and Audit, on an update on the audits that are currently ongoing. We have a number going on and are expecting to hear back on those audits with a lot in March and April. Included in those reviews is a review of textbook costs, a review of information technology oversight, both of which we anticipate being completed in March or April. There is also an audit underway on student mental health services, which should be completed next fall. Ms. Radu remarked that the Legislative Audit Bureau is expected to release their statewide report on IT systems in late winter or early spring. Vice President Debbie Durkin stated that the work group created to develop implementation options for the recommendations contained in the report of the Office of Operations Review and Audit regarding segregated student fees has been meeting. They held their 3rd meeting yesterday. Their recommendations will be vetted by administrative and student constituencies, with the final recommendations on segregated fees coming to the committee this spring. We then moved to the 2007-2009 Administrative Reduction Plan. Associate Vice President Frida Harris noted that the Governor's 2007-09 budget instructions discussed a $14.1 million administrative reduction plan with the committee. The university feels it could achieve $4 to $6 million in additional efficiencies. The balance of the plan consists of one-time lapses of various state general purpose revenues, GPR appropriations, and university program revenues. As an alternative, the plan proposes to retain the $14.1 million, but to reallocate the entire amount into operations that would allow the university to increase enrollments by an additional 2,500 students over and above those enrollments proposed in the UW's growth agenda for Wisconsin. The reallocation assumes a state investment to support the growth agenda. Based on some very, I think, important and legitimate concerns raised by Regent Burmaster regarding the original draft, which included $1 million to assign an individual in each campus to administer the Wisconsin Covenant. Regent Burmaster pointed out that that may or may not be necessary, and that for us to put in our plan, that might send some very mixed signals to other partners in this process. So we have amended the plan to essentially, obviously, allocate the same number of dollars, but do so in a way of providing more general support. The expectation that the implementation of the Wisconsin Covenant will require additional university support, unknown or unclear exactly what that may or may not be. That resolution will also be presented at the end of my report as a consent resolution. We then moved to approval of the policy on the recognition of student organizations in response to an ever-changing legal environment regarding and involving student organizations. UW System General Counsel Patricia Brady presented the committee with a proposed resolution that would allow student organizations that select their members or officers on the basis of a commitment to a set of beliefs to limit participation in the organization so long as no student is excluded on the basis of several discriminating factors. This resolution, once again, will be presented at the end of my report as a consent resolution. Finally, the committee heard on a number of topics from Vice President Durkin. In particular, she commented on the Joint Audit Committee that President Riley and President Walsh alluded to earlier. After the audit was outlined by State Auditor Jan Mueller and Audit Director Kate Wade, President Riley and President Walsh were reported to have had a friendly exchange with the committee and legislators who commented that the university was on the right track in making the changes that are needed. The Business, Finance, and Audit Committee unanimously approved the following resolutions, which I now present as consent items. On behalf of the Business, Finance, and Audit Committee, I move adoption of Resolution 1.2C, University of Wisconsin System Criminal Background Check Policy. Resolution 1.2.D, consideration of salary adjustments for senior academic leaders to address recruitment and retention challenges for chancellors at UW Green Bay, UW Oshkosh, and UW Parkside. Resolution 1.2.F1, the 2007-09 Administrative Reduction Plan, and Resolution 1.2.F2, the Policy on Recognition of Student Organizations.
Is there a second to the motion? Is there a request to move any item from the consent agenda? Regent Salas?
Yes, I'd like to remove 1.2C, or that is a section dealing with criminal background check.
Okay. Any other?
I'd like to remove 1.2.F sub 2.
Okay, on the remaining consent agenda, is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? May I have a motion on 1.2C?
So
We have a motion. Is there a second? There's a second. It's now up for discussion. Regent Salas.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Let's just throughout the process that we've been responding to what actually was a review of our personal policies in regard to some very difficult challenges that we faced during this period of time that included not only changes in the personal policies in regard to the criminal background check policies. There were other issues that some viable and some not so. I recall having representatives here in regards to tablespoon. And I was very proud of the position that we took in response to some challenges imposed on us by the state legislature. I believe that the changes that were undertaken in regard to the criminal background checks were limited after the audits that were undertaken to a very small number of employees that we had received an extraordinary amount of publicity. And in response, and I think an appropriate response, and in response to, again, the legislature, in regard to the small number of staff members, we moved effectively to be able to change our policies to see that those 3 or 4 members that were at that time incarcerated and still receiving pay, that situation would never occur again. And I applaud the activities of the committees that led us to those decisions. But I'm concerned about this criminal background checks, and in particular the response by our faculty. And our faculties in regards to, on 2 major points. They include both of our doctoral institutions, or that is, the faculty senates at both UWM and UW Milwaukee are concerned about some of these aspects of this policy. And secondly, I'm concerned about the press. You know that there was some distinguished professor that joined us earlier in this discussion, talking about how in the process we hadn't included them in this. And I'm sensitive to that issue. I know that what you're responses were, or that is that the results are the same or would have been the same if, in fact, we would have included family members or not. We did hear them, but they weren't part of our committee. With that in mind, and with the response of the faculty, I don't think that I can support this policy. I am concerned about the chilling effect, the breadth of how extensive it is, and the concerns that have been expressed by the faculty, Mr. President.
Regent Pruitt, please.
Regent South, I certainly appreciate, as always, respect your views on this. I would just encourage you and all of us to do as I know you've done already, and read the words of this policy, because I think they are fairly measured, and I think it's reflective of and attempts to respond to at least many of the concerns that you raised. I mean, which are clearly very important. You know, the absence of a comprehensive policy across the system, I think, was a great concern to those who did the audit and recommended that we take a look at this. But in particular, I mean, I think the paragraph that means a lot to me is, whereas such a policy will ensure that all prospective employees are treated consistently and equitably, and it will underscore our commitment to providing our students, faculty, and staff, as well as the citizens of Wisconsin, with academic communities that are safe and secure. And I know it's a difficult issue in many respects, but I think, you know, I think we tried very hard in this resolution to reflect the legitimate concerns that many of our governance groups have.
Yes, please.
Now that you mentioned the particulars, let me mention some of my particular concern in this. In your discussion, in your deliberation about the criminal background checks, you discussed whether this would be undertaken in-house or whether we were going to go to private companies to carry this out. I'm very concerned about, first of all, it's going to be costly one way or the other. But if that's what the people of the state of Wisconsin want, then we'll make that expenditure. But how we make it, I think, has to be determined more effectively. I'm really concerned about going to a private enterprise and giving that to a third party without having any appropriate oversight. And that, I mean, now that you mentioned particulars, that is a particular concern of mine about this space. And I know you deliberated on that, but it's just something that I think a lot of faculty members are concerned of being part of that kind of review by a third party without an appropriate oversight.
I'm just looking at, okay, yes, President Riley.
Yes, and I too respect your issues with this, Regent Salas, and I share them largely. Let me make a few comments to try to respond to them. On the matter of the reaction of some of our governance groups, we now, just this morning, actually received a resolution from the head of the president of the Faculty Senate at Green Bay supporting this. So we now have 4 no's from among governance groups and 4 yeses from among the governance groups that have weighed in on this issue. And 3 of them have expressed concerns, largely around the issue of it needs more work. I think among those that have said that they would not support it, and among those who have expressed concerns, many of the concerns, some of which you're just mentioning, are those I think we do need to address. And I'll commit, as I said in my response to the governance groups that have written to you or to me, that in the next 5 months, which we will take to get this right, we will address those concerns jointly with those governance groups. And let me assure you that if in any case a campus does decide to use a private company to do some of these checks, we will make sure there is adequate oversight, that the companies won't be making those decisions, as it were, on their own. So we will work with the governance groups to ensure that their concerns are met over the ones that have them over the course of the next 5 months.
And in the category, President Riley, of the jobs that you're going to be evaluating, of the individuals who are going to be involved in this criminal background checks, the statutory language on this was developed for whom? About child care workers or family service workers. the language that you have available to apply it to the kind of an academic setting or the of employment practices that we have, I think it's a stretch. I think that you need to redefine once you proceed in the background checks some language other than the existing statutory language, which I think, in my opinion, is designed to protect children and was designed by the legislatures for people working in family service, etc., and other related services, not for an academic institution, not for the breadth of the type of employees and the relationships that they have with primarily adult students in our campus.
Well, I'd agree. I guess I'd add, however, that I think we, because of the increasing number of pre-college programs and like programs that we run on our campuses, have larger and larger numbers of children on our campuses, and we need to be mindful of that. We also have 17-year-olds and 16-year-olds who start on our campuses as freshmen, and I think a big part of this is to ensure those students and their families that we offer a genuinely safe environment for them. We instituted a policy like this when I was Chancellor of Extension, and I can tell you, based on that experience, I'm glad we did.
Any other comments? And I'll
just a quick question for either President Riley or Al, Chris, because we talked about this yesterday in the committee meeting a little bit. A, could you discuss the cost? And B, the two concerns that were raised that we talked about were confidentiality and potential misuse of this information. How are we going to try to, first the cost, how are we going to try to address those concerns of confidentiality or misuse of that information?
Yeah, the cost issue that I addressed yesterday briefly depends upon whether or not institutions use their own staff, or whether they decide in individual cases to contract out with a company that we have a relationship with called Higher Right, that has a contract with all Big Ten institutions for doing background checks. But on average, we're talking about between $200,000 and $250,000 a year of additional costs, not counting staff time, that would go to paying such things as the $5 charge that we would have to pay to access the state records, to up to perhaps as much as $50 or perhaps somewhat more than that for more complex out-of-state searches that we would contract for. So over a year's time, institutions, however, in their implementation policies, will need to indicate how they're going to do these searches, how the information is going to be secured so that it's not, confidentiality is not breached with that information. So that's something that my staff and Pat Brady and her staff and I are going to be reviewing these policies, the implementation policies, which are not due to us until May 1 at the latest. Some are ready to go now. We're reviewing drafts of policies now, but our concerns are that the information that's gathered is used appropriately and confidentiality is maintained, to address some of the concerns that Regent Salas has raised.
Any other comments? Two comments I'd like to make, and I appreciate your concern about this cases. But the lesson we learned from the disciplinary committee was twofold. One is this is a very serious matter to the public, to everyone, and we don't want to ever look back and say we could have done it and we didn't. The second thing is that's more impressive to me is that the governance system works, and that is when you hear Regent Spector's report, you'll find that we went from A to about Z before we finally got it right. And this is requiring reports back on our plans by May 1. I'm confident that President Riley and the governance system will get there. And there will be other questions, but we got to start, and we got to start somewhere, and that's what this is to me. Seeing no other questions on the motion to pass, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I need a motion for 1.2F, parent 2, end of parent. So moved. Is there a second? We have a second? Regent Bartel.
Thank you. I have mainly questions about this policy. I'm not sure how I feel about it. I know that this is a very delicate area. I know that this policy was drafted to comply with applicable court decisions in recognition that have to do with recognition of student organizations. But I know that there are concerns that students have about this policy that relate to the process by which students are permitted to join. Specifically, under the policy, a student who wants to join an organization will have to express his or her adherence to a particular set of beliefs or mission or creed. And apparently to do that publicly, as I read the policy, it says upon individual inquiry. And I guess I'm concerned a bit, and I'm not sure how you resolve this, but I'm concerned that students are going to have to stand up in front of a bunch of people and recite some dogma that will admit them to an organization. Now, maybe that's not the way it's going to happen, but that troubles me. And I'm curious as to whether the committee has considered that process, the nuts and bolts process of students becoming members of an organization like that, and what the implications of that might be for that student and basically for the student population.
It might be helpful if we put this in context, and that is there is a lawsuit that goes on and it'd be better to understand it in the context of the lawsuit. It's a little bit different in that we were prohibiting them from getting funds because they required people to have certain beliefs, and there was a First Amendment issue. Pat, could you help us with that?
Yeah.
Yes, well, I don't think it's really contemplated that anybody has to make some sort of public affirmation of that type, but this is arising from situations in which some student organizations, although certainly not all, want to assure that their members and leaders are in agreement with whatever their belief system is. And so typically what would happen is you'd be signing something. What the policy is trying to say is that we want to recognize student organizations, but we want to strike a balance between assuring that they don't discriminate against students who want to be part of their group on the basis of a protected characteristic, and yet maintain that they have the First Amendment right of expressive association to have people in their group who agree with their purposes. It's a difficult line to walk down. I agree. We relied on a model that North Carolina used because we felt as our little working group that this struck the best balance that we could come up with. Chancellor Markey and I worked on that, so we did look at some other options, but this one seemed to be the most appropriate.
Didn't the Seventh Circuit case direct us this way?
And it appears, yes, that as a result of the Seventh Circuit case, which was a decision on a preliminary injunction, was issued in that case while we were in the course of group deliberations. And so, yes, we're trying to respond to that, too. And that seems to suggest that we have to, give a lot of weight to the expressive associational interests under the First Amendment for the student org. So.
The Seventh Circuit, as I read the description of the case, said that the student organization was right in its claim that the university violated its constitutional right to expressive association by requiring it to accept members whose beliefs and activities violated its creed. And I understand that legal point. I guess the issue that I'm raising is with this policy, it seems to me we're suggesting to student organizations how it is that they should go about screening members. And with this policy, we're suggesting that they make individual inquiry as to whether the members adhere to their beliefs. And I guess, that concept of having somebody get up and or sit down and expressing their adherence to a belief, it troubles me. I mean, I guess that that is an act that none of us have to do very often, except when we get married. And
I can figure some others. Sorry.
Did Judge Bartell make you stand up for that?
Jeff, your point is interesting. I think that it was just a level of evidence. In other words, that it was meant to mean just make sure they want to do it, not how you do it or how you ask them the question. I don't know, maybe it can be adjusted to make sure it doesn't sound like they're being required to stand outside in the cold.
Well, it's those three words that bothered me about the policy, upon individual inquiry, and I wasn't sure what that meant, and whether it suggests that that's what they should be doing, is having people stand up and affirm.
Well, I think all it really means is it's an individual affirmation. I affirm, you affirm, whatever. We don't all, just mumble together, we affirm something. I think that's all it is.
Well, we're getting to...
That's clear. I understand.
Can I ask, Pat, did these words come out of a model or a template, something that had been approved, or can we adjust it so that it satisfies Regent Bartell's concerns?
This was the North Carolina model, adjusted with the characteristics that are covered in our statute, and was, the result of this model in their court case was to render their case moot.
And Jeff, do you have a thought?
Well, I don't see why the policy couldn't just say, I mean, just, I'd like that better. The latter part of the policy, of course, prohibits throwing somebody out for prohibited reasons, which I think that's good.
Do you want to make a motion?
I'll move that we eliminate the words upon individual inquiry.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second? Motion and second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, on the original motion as amended. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No.
Mr. President, that concludes.
Excuse me. Tim, we'll address your concern with Pat. Is that okay? Tom.
Or Thomas.
You're Tim today. All right.
No, thank you.
Okay, go ahead. That concludes your report?
Yeah, that concludes my report, Mr. President.
Next matter is Regent Spector. Is this because you don't like your seat?
No, because I'm not tall. Well, you might want to come up here too sometime. I'm just kidding. I want to be able to see the people I'm going to recognize. I think you could say, David, that we've gone from A to double Z. Done here. Well, we're back, hopefully for the final time, from our committee to recommend to you adoption of a resolution which will transmit proposed rules to the legislature for the next steps that then take place at the legislative level. It's been an interesting journey as we've gone through, and I want to say three quick things before we turn to any questions you might have about the content of what we're proposing. The first is to thank our committee, and our committee in alphabetical order is Pat Brady, Walter Dickey, who's a professor in the law school, and I don't know if he's here or not today. I don't think he is. I didn't see him, but he gave us great assistance and help based on experiences he'd had in dealing with some of the prior cases that Jesus referred to, the narrow band of criminal cases, and he had a lot of practical information. Dave Marquis from Platteville Peggy Rosenzweig, who I must say, as I watched her up here speaking before, even though she's from a different party, reminded me of Nancy Pelosi. That we have our own powerful Peggy as well as Nancy. Brent Smith, and of course Dave Walsh, our region president, who provided great assistance throughout, attended all the meetings, and brought a perspective often broader than the one we could have individually because of his knowledge of the prior cases and of his interaction with legislators and the governor. Second, I want to thank specifically, and it's been referred to, but I think it's worthy of further comment, those faculty and academic staff representatives and legislative council personnel who took lots of time to meet and participate in all this. Particularly the academic staff reps and the faculty people were steadfast in working with us. Their concerns and suggested changes are an integral part of what you have in front of you. And they moved us from A to Z at least, often with very well thought out and very persuasive comments as to how we could reach the objectives we wanted to reach, but do it in as narrow a fashion and as a fashion that harmed the least other interest as possible. Now, some of those people might be here today. If you are, why don't you stand up? Anybody who is from a faculty rep. And why don't you just tell us who you are and the school you're from, starting with the gentleman way over there.
Les Chapin, UWF, Faculty Senate President.
Donna Silver, Academic Staff Rep, UW System.
Erica Sanders, Faculty Rep, UW Milwaukee.
Sharon Nelson, I Faculty Rep from UW Extension.
Doug Hassler, I'm Chair of the Senate Steering Committee for the Colleges.
Joe Hogan, Senator Chair, UW Whitewater.
Mike Witt, Faculty Rep from Eau Claire.
Dave Carlson, Academic Staff Rep from the UW Colleges.
Judy Blackstone, Academic Staff Rep from UW Eau Claire.
Thank you very much to all of you. Appreciate your being here today and the help you gave along the way, along with others who are not here today and played an important role. Finally, one last preliminary point. We did discuss at our last meeting, and I said I would bring up the fact that we would bring to you and to President Riley the strong feeling from those who attended our meetings, and I think from our committee as well, that we ought to discuss going forward some kind of a process to deal with problems like this so that we can implement shared governance perhaps in a little easier way than we were able to this time. I said I would bring that up, and I'm pleased to do so. I think we did achieve what we wanted to achieve here through a lot of time and effort of all concerned, and perhaps there is a way, with some careful thought or a task force or whatever, Kevin, you might choose to do, would help to deal with that in those very deeply felt areas of where shared governance comes into play.
Yes, and might I say, Regent Spector, that I've already had a conversation with the faculty reps group about this, and I believe they've agreed to go ahead and draft a procedure up that we can take a look at, so we'll look forward to having that come forward and discuss it with them, and then hopefully discuss it with you. Is that, Chris, am I characterizing that correctly? No? Okay, good. Good.
Well, I'm going to leave that to you guys to work out. I will tell you that one person who isn't here who was very helpful to us was Bob Matthew, the chairman of the Madison Faculty Senate, or whatever the right title is, and he has indicated an interest in participating in this as well, Kevin, just so you're aware. Good. Now, I'm pleased to turn to the resolution and to the underlying proposed rules. and to see if there are any questions before we hopefully move forward adopting the resolution. I should tell you that the executive summary, and I should mention one other person, because while Pat was a great legal counselor, Chris Ashley, I don't know if Chris is around or not, had a great deal to do, correct Pat, in working with us on this. In fact, I worked with Chris a lot with Pat, and he had a lot to do with drafting the executive summary as well as the actual document. He's an attorney in Pat's office. But I hope the executive summary gives you a sense of what we've changed as we went along and how we've narrowed it, yet, as I said earlier, tried to stick with the goals that we wanted to reach that had to do with both expedited process and suspensions without pay in particular.
Are there any questions to Mike? Okay. I need a motion to resolution 11.8.8.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that we pass resolution 11.8A. Any further discussion? Well, I have to say one thing, and that is Mike congratulated and thanked everybody for all their input, and believe me, Mike did a wonderful job, both as a member of the committee, but more important as a chairman who brought together a lot of groups and differences of opinion and reflected people's interests, and I congratulate you and thank you very much, because it was a huge step.
Thank you very much.
That doesn't count as a vote. We still have to vote. So, seeing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Next matter is, I would like a motion to cancel the January 4th and 5th meeting. We do not have any reason right now to have it. If we need to have it, we'll call it, but I need a motion to cancel. I have a motion and a second to cancel January 4th, 5th meeting. Any discussion? Seeing none. I ruled that out of order.
Can't believe you mean that.
All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Are there any communications, petitions, or memorials? Seeing none. Is there any unfinished business that anyone would like to bring up?
Can I just say something in public? It's Cora's last meeting, and Danae spoke very eloquently about how she's helped her during her term on the Board of Regents. And I just want to say also that Cora's been, sometimes you read about people in the newspaper and you never have the opportunity to work with such brilliant leaders. And I'm glad that my 23-year-old self has been able to work and be educated under someone like Cora Merritt, and I want to thank her for all the hard work that she's done, not only for me, but there's students out there that are in a better situation because Cora Merritt has looked out for them during their time on the during her time at UW system, and I want to thank you for being able to be that person that they may never know your name, but that you've changed their life, and it's in a positive way. And thank you very much for all the leadership you've shown me.
It's 10 to 12. We'll take a 10-minute recess and can reconvene at 12 and then go into closed session.